a really big one for me. Now, there is a caveat. What is your domino move saved the best to last? Okay, so I've talked a lot about what not to do when goal setting. Now, my first tip for better goal setting is what I call the domino effect. If you have several goals and several things that you want to achieve, this was the case for me, for instance, in business, I have several ideas and several things that in my mind are equally as important. So it's hard for me to say I'm letting one of them go or I'm focusing on one versus another one because, one of them, for instance, may be like a true passion, but then another one kind of makes more sense financially. And so they each seem important, right? And so I found myself in this cycle of not being able to prioritize my goals and thinking, okay, I will just give everything a little bit of attention. And so everything will rise up together. But of course, that doesn't happen because you're spread too thin. What really works is that compounding of effort, your focus being on one thing, and that becomes your catalyst for your other goals, right? So it's literally the domino effect where you make one move and the effects of that are felt later on. It impacts something else, which then impacts something else, and then it becomes easier as you go. And so the hardest bit actually is that first move. And once you're able to sort of overcome that hurdle, everything else just goes a lot easier. So my example of business, for instance, there are lots of other things that I want to focus on. I have chosen now to focus on YouTube in 2025, and that was difficult for me because there are so many other things that I'm passionate about and so many other things that I see for myself down the line, and I want to prioritize all of them now. But I found that's what was keeping me stuck because I was so divided. I was trying to fit in so many things in 24 hours in 1 week, and I wasn't making progress on anything. And so I'm really going to go deep and really focus on YouTube, not saying bye to everything else, just parking them for the moment, thinking of the long game, thinking of the big picture, and recognizing that my efforts focusing on YouTube are not lost. It doesn't mean that I'm not still working towards my ultimate goals because, full transparency, the other things that I want to do, I will benefit from having an audience. So if I spend time now cultivating that audience, working on building those connections, building authority in a space, and marketing myself, yes, I'm not actively focusing on those other projects and those other goals, but I'm still laying the groundwork, building foundations, working towards things. And actually, once I knock down that first domino with YouTube and I establish myself, all of the other things will become easier because I will already have everything else that I need for the other goals later on. And so it makes more sense that. And so I really encourage you to identify what your domino is. What is your first move? What is your domino move that will act as a catalyst and trickle down and compound and make it so much easier for you to achieve things 5, 6, 7 steps down? And also, if we look at examples of successful people, right, they all start with one thing. They all master one skill. They build their reputation. They build one thing that they're known for. And once they have that, they're then able to diversify, spread their wings, because they then start earning enough where they can outsource, they can hire a team to help them. And so they're not relying on just the hours that they have in the day, just the mental capacity that they have. They have built systems, acquired resources that they can then deploy into other things. And they also, along the way, they have built their brands, they have marketed, they have planted seeds, they have gained experience that they can then transfer into the ultimate things that they want to do. It's just like working certain jobs whilst you're building up to your dream job. None of it is wasted. You're still acquiring skills. You're still learning all of these things that will help you and make it so much easier when you get to your ultimate destination. And so it's all about, what is that one move? What is that domino that will then kick everything else off for you? It really is an example of working smarter. I don't want to say working smarter, not harder, because it's still hard work, but it's sort of working smarter and not working based on sentiments, right? Because we can be very sentimental towards our goals and visions that we have. And I am definitely an example of this. There is something that I have had to step back from, put on hold, and I'm so attached to it. It feels like my baby, but I just know that in this season, it makes more sense to focus on something else And when I ultimately dive into that, it will be so much easier going forward. My next tip is to pick 3 goals that you're going to focus on, no more than 3, and make sure that these goals are in different areas of life. One may be in career, one may be in your health, one may be in your relationships. Now, I know this kind of goes against what I was saying because I was just saying focus on one thing and blah, blah, blah. That still applies in terms of not overwhelming yourself and having something clear that you're working towards. But I think it's also important to have different goals in a couple of different areas of your life. And here's why. Let's say your main goal for the year is to master a particular sport. You want to become really good at netball, and that's your main focus for the year. All of your attention is going on this one goal. That's great for all of the things that I've already said, but if something goes wrong, let's say you become injured, we don't know how life will play out, right? We can set our intentions and we can work towards things, but at the end of the day, life is going to happen and we then have to react to that. What we don't want is to put ourselves in a position where we feel like a complete failure if we put all of our eggs in this one basket and something happens and we can't achieve that, right? So that's why I find it important to have no more than 3, so we're still not overwhelming ourselves, but in different areas of life. So like I was saying, if you're focusing on your body but you're physically unable to, that doesn't mean your year is a complete write-off. You're still giving yourself a couple of opportunities or a couple of areas that you can thrive in. And so I think it's also good for having balance, right? Nobody wants to be that one-dimensional person where you're at a dinner party or you're on a date and you have one topic of conversation. Someone says, what's going on with you, or what are you working on? And it's one thing all the time. So it also is just good to be more interesting because you have a couple of things that you can talk about. But even in saying that, I still 100% believe in focusing mostly on one thing. But you still have a couple of side goals on the periphery. So the next thing, I mentioned to you earlier that I was spending more time tracking my progress than actually working on the goals that I set. So my next tip is just to strip everything back. I still 100% believe in tracking because it's feedback, right? But I have realized that it's much better if you have a simple way of tracking. That way it doesn't become another task on your calendar or this daunting thing that you have to do that then takes up lots of time. It's something that you can do quickly, is effective, and gives you real-time feedback. It's so much better if you focus on tracking daily or weekly, because if something happens, you're able to bounce back a lot quicker. You can do it in your notes app, you can do it journaling, things like that. The next thing is around accountability. Now, it's kind of linked to tracking. It's a form of tracking. If you have somebody to hold you accountable, that helps to motivate you and helps to keep you going with your goal. The accountability piece is a big part of goal setting because it's really tied to the outcome. The more you are held accountable, the more you feel that there is an expectation, the more likely you are to stick to that goal. And that kind of leads into the next thing. So reward, that's something that I'm also introducing into my goal setting, and it makes it fun. I think I was always approaching goal setting from a negative place. I was approaching it from lack, let's say. So I would identify what I perceived as a lack in my life, and I would almost be upset at myself for this lack, and the goal and everything around the goal was almost more of a punishment and like, you must do this so that you can get to this point. And I've completely changed that. I now look at goals as self-care. It's an investment into myself. And so I have a positive spin on it now, and I attach rewards to it. And so it feels good to work towards my goals because it feels positive and I have something to look forward to at the end. Now, there is a caveat to this. Let's say your goal is to lose weight. You cannot then say, every time I work out, I will eat a burger. You have to be really careful with your rewards. So for instance, in my case, I attach rewards differently. Let's say I keep up with my habit habits of working out. My reward may be I will watch a movie that I wanted to watch, or I will buy myself something. What I don't want is to program my brain into thinking, okay, let me work out, because when I work out, then I can eat like rubbish. One, that's not how I want to program myself. And two, that's actually taking away from all of the efforts that you're putting in to achieve the goal, right? If every time you work out, you then eat a burger, you're going to take much longer to reach your goal. I try to reward myself, but I reward myself with something that isn't tied to the goal. That reward does not affect the area of my life that I'm trying to work on. So this next one is a really big one for me. This is a big reason for my inconsistency on YouTube, and this is around tying goals to things that are outside of your control. So for instance, I would always set goals like by September, I want to have 700 followers, for instance. Now, on the surface, that might seem fine. It may seem realistic, but that is completely outside of my control. I could do everything right and people could still not subscribe, right? You just never know how these things play out. So that's a very bad way that I was setting goals. And so I've learned to set goals now that are tied to habits. So maybe I will grab my journal and I'm like, okay, what is my dream in this area of my life? Let's say I want to have a career on YouTube. I will journal about that, right? So I will play out this scenario in my journal to get clarity about a particular goal. I will then say, okay, if the goal is 1,000 subscribers on YouTube or whatever it is, rather than stopping there and making that the goal, I then adapt it and say, what habits can I put in place? It's also a way of breaking down that goal. So it's reverse engineering from the big goal to actually creating action steps for that goal. But not just that, it's creating the habits of the person who has that goal. So what is somebody doing in order to get 1,000 subscribers on YouTube? It's not just, I want to have 1,000 subscribers. I'm going to have no direction, no strategy, but I'm aiming for this goal. It's unlikely that you're going to achieve it. However, if you then build the habits of a person that has that, you're so much more likely to reach that goal. But also, those habits are completely within your control. Yes, sometimes life gets in the way, but if I, instead of saying, I want to have 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, if I say, I want to focus on creating 1 or 2 videos per week, or I want to spend 1 hour every day editing, that's something that's totally within my control. It's something I can measure. It's something that I can focus on. There are no outside influences. It's not dependent on anyone outside of me. So that is a much better goal that I have control over. And it's a habit that I can build. And not just that, it allows me to test if I actually want that goal, right? Because it's no good saying, for instance, I want to be a footballer, but you don't like training every day. Because if you want to be a footballer, it also comes with training every day. So by setting the habits as the goal, the inputs, it then shows you, is this something that I can sustain? Is this something that I enjoy? And do I want what comes at the end of it? It doesn't make sense for me to pursue something that I don't enjoy, because then I'm stuck in that thing. I'm having to keep doing it. If you enjoy that process, then you know that you will enjoy where that will take you. Because sometimes we have goals and our perception of that goal is completely different from the reality. But this way, as you're working towards that goal, you get a taste of what reality will be like before it happens. If we're using the YouTube example again, maybe you don't enjoy filming. Maybe you thought, I want to be a YouTuber, but you hate filming, and you find, actually, I much prefer editing. Maybe you're able then to clarify, you know what? I don't want to be a YouTuber. I want to be a video editor, and you can edit for other people and get paid for that. It really helps you to clarify, do I actually want this, or is there something else that's better suited based on how I'm enjoying or not enjoying what it takes to get that goal? This next one is elevating your life in a way that is your version of success. It's your version of the leveled up version of you. If we look online, we are constantly fed information of, this is what the ideal life looks like, this is what productivity looks like. So there's lots of pressure to conform, and you think if you're not doing something how everyone else is doing it, then it means you're a failure, right? So this next point is all around working with your own rhythm. What is intuitive to you? What feels good to you? For instance, everyone else is setting a goal to wake up at 5 a.m. and do this elaborate morning routine, but actually you're genuinely not a morning person and you thrive at night. So why would you set yourself a goal to wake up at 5 a.m. just because everyone else is doing it, just because people say that's the secret to success? Maybe your route to success is sleeping in, having a slow morning, and then really working hard at night when you have that boost of energy, when your brain is working at its optimal level. It's raising that self-awareness so that you can elevate your life in a way that makes sense for you, in a way that feels elevated to you and not just recreating something that was sold to you. It's becoming aware of what we're fed, how we're marketed to. This was so liberating for me. For instance, I now go to work at 10 a.m. and I struggled so much before trying to find a morning routine that worked for me. I thought I have to do this at this time, do this at this time, and I have found it so much better now to completely change my routine and work with my body's natural rhythms, work with what feels good to me, what I need in the morning, not what everyone else needs. I sometimes arrive at work 4 hours later than everyone else, so I could easily feel as though I'm behind or I'm not doing what everyone else is doing, and I really ought to be showing up at this time and doing that, but it doesn't work for me, and I feel so much more successful, and I feel like I get so much more out of my day when I design my day in a way that suits me. And so the point here when you're goal setting is to think about not just your goal and where you want to be, but what comes naturally to you. How can you make getting to that goal simpler and more intuitive? Because like I said, it's hard changing, it's hard trying to go after these goals. And so if we can do things that make it easier for us along the way, it will make it so much easier for us to achieve the goal. I know I've said that everything is good, but I have truly saved the best to last. This has been my biggest flex recently with goal setting, and that is making sure that all of my goals are in alignment with God's design. This is my biggest priority. I have what's called my God filter for my goals. And once I've done everything that we've talked about, once I've made sure that my goal is specific, I'm measuring it, all of these things, I then run it through my God filter. Does it align with God's design? Is this something that is drawing me closer to God, which is an ultimate goal of mine, the most important goal? How will I respond to success? If I achieve this goal, is this something that I will use to glorify God? Will this add to my testimony? Is this something that I can use to demonstrate how God has worked in my life? Or is this something that is likely to pull me away from God and to pull me back into a lifestyle that I don't want to engage in? So this is my ultimate test when I'm setting goals. Is this something that God would be pleased with? Is this something that can be kingdom work? This is honestly the thing that gives me the most peace of mind with goal setting, because then it also adds purpose to the goal. And sometimes we really need something that's bigger than ourselves when we are chasing these goals. It can be very easy to become demotivated, fall off track, and all of these things. But if you have a bigger mission, a bigger purpose, when you fall off, it's that purpose, it's that drive, it's that thing that's bigger than you that will pull you through. And what bigger purpose than contributing to God's kingdom, where you're like, you know what? If I persevere, if I push through, I can really show what God has done in my life. I can really testify to the blessings. I can inspire other people. And this doesn't mean that everybody needs to become an evangelist. This does not mean that you need to preach with everything that you do, but it's, does this goal take me away from God, or does this goal align with God's plan, right? So let's use an example. Let's say I have a goal to become a fashion designer. I don't, but let's say that's my goal. I have a couple of options options here. So I could design clothes that the world would appreciate. You know, I could go down the route of being very provocative. They say sex sells and all of that. I could definitely go that route and probably see success in the short term, right? Or if I pass this through my God filter, I can still work on being a fashion designer. I can still have my desires. I can still pursue things that I want to pursue, but I make sure that that's aligned with God's design, designing things that are elegant, worthy of righteous women. I'm designing things that go against the culture. I'm being a good steward of my talent. You know, these talents that we have all come from God anyway, right? So am I being a good steward of that talent? Am I using it in a way that glorifies God? It will be pleasing to God. That is my ultimate test. So once I have done all of the things that I've talked about, I pass all of my goals now through this God filter. I feel like I need a better name for it, but I pass it through this God filter. Would God approve of this goal? And once I feel like I have that seal of approval, it almost gives me an extra boost to go for it, because I'm like, yep, God signed off on this goal. This is something that I can pursue, and I feel confident about it. I feel more invigorated to go for it. I feel like I have God's support with it. It also makes it easier for us to achieve our goals, right? If they are in alignment with God's design, we can ask God to partner with us on this journey. I think sometimes we think we're left to our own devices, but He wants to be involved in all aspects of our lives. He wants that intimate relationship with us. So if we are working in God's will, we can ask for help, and then we don't need to rely on our own strength. We can really see what God can do, and we can achieve so much more than we would off our own accord and by our own strength. So that is it. Thank you so much for sticking with me on this video. Give this video a like if you haven't already, and comment below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one.